Concerning contemporary numbers and patterns, nations marked by high levels of organic atheism, such as Sweden or the Netherlands, are among the healthiest, wealthiest, and best educated, as well as the freest societies on the face of our planet. Consider the Human Development Report of 2004, commissioned by the United Nations Development Program. This report ranks 177 nations on a Human Development Index, which measures societal health through a weighing of such indicators as life expectancy at birth, adult literacy rate, per capita income, and educational attainment. According to the 2004 report, the 5 highest ranked nations in terms of total human development were Norway, Sweden, Australia, Canada, and the Netherlands. All 5 of these countries are characterized by notably high degrees of organic atheism. Of the top 25 nations ranked on the Human Development Index, all but one, that of Ireland, are top-ranking non-belief nations containing very high percentages of organic atheism. Conversely, of those countries ranked at the bottom of the Human Development Index, the bottom 50 all are countries lacking statistically significant percentages of atheism. Concerning the infant mortality rate, irreligious countries have the lowest rates, according to the CIA World Fact Book. Concerning international poverty rates, United Nations report on the world social situation in 2003 found that of the 40 poorest nations on earth, all but one, that of Vietnam, are highly religious nations with statistically minimal or insignificant levels of atheism. Again, we're talking about poverty rates. Concerning illiteracy rates, the same report found that of the 35 nations with the highest levels of youth illiteracy rates, are all highly religious nations with statistically insignificant levels of organic atheism. Of course, concerning homicide rates, nations with the highest homicide rates are all highly religious nations with minimal or statistically insignificant levels of organic atheism, while nations with the lowest homicide rates tend to be highly secular nations with high levels of atheism. Concerning suicidal rates, religious nations are far better or fare better than secular nations, of course. According to the 2003 World Health Organization, the WHO report on international male suicide rates. Concerning gender equality, nations marked by high degrees of organic atheism are among the most egalitarian in the world, while highly religious nations are among the most oppressive. According to the 2004 Human Development Report, the top 10 nations with the highest degrees of gender equality are all strongly organic atheistic nations with significantly high percentages of non-belief. Conversely, the bottom 10 are all highly religious nations without any statistically significant percentages of atheists. Countries with the most female members of parliament tend to be countries characterized by high degrees of organic atheism, such as Sweden and Denmark, and countries with the fewest female members in parliament tend to be highly religious countries, such as Pakistan and Nigeria. In toto, with the exception of suicide, countries marked by high rates of atheism are among the most societally healthy on earth, while the societies characterized by non-existent rates of atheism are among the most unhealthy. Of course, societal health seems to cause widespread atheism, and societal insecurity seems to cause widespread belief in God. So, in sum, the loss of belief in God has occurred over the course of the 20th century in Canada, Australia, and various European countries, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Scandinavia. Secularization is limited to specific advanced industrialized nations and has not occurred throughout much of the rest of the world. And these nations, of course, are characterized with relatively low birth rates. In recent years, a new attempt at explaining religious belief has emerged. Its central tenet is that belief is biologically determined, neurologically based, or genetically inborn, growing out of the natural processes of the human brain. Religious belief represents the healthy functioning of the biologically and culturally well-adapted human mind or brain. For example, Michael Persinger has stressed the role of the hippocampus, the amygdala, the temporal lobes, and hormonal processes in explaining religious belief in God. Newberg argues, for example, that religiosity is an evolved neurological process, that the roots of belief in God are to be found in the writing of the human brain, or the wiring. I guess you could say writing, but really he terms it as wiring, referring to a electrical system. So he says that, obviously because neurons are quite like that. And of course he says religiosity is an involved neurological process, that the roots of belief in God are to be found in the wiring of the human brain, and that as long as our brains are arranged the way they are, belief in God will remain, or at least the desire to have a belief in God. With between 500 million and 750 million non-theists living on this planet today, any suggestion that belief in God is natural, inborn, or a result of how our brains are wired becomes difficult to sustain, however. It is simply unsustainable to argue that these glaring differences in rates of atheism among these nations is due to different biological, neurological, or other such brain-related properties. Rather, the differences are better explained by taking into account historical, cultural, economic, political, and sociological factors. And, of course, in conclusio, the nations with the highest degrees of organic atheism include most of the nations of Europe, Japan, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Taiwan, and Israel. Atheism is virtually non-existent in most of Africa, South America, and the Middle East, as well as Asia. High levels of organic atheism are strongly correlated with high levels of societal health, such as low poverty rates and strong gender equality. And in many societies, particularly among the poorest nations with the highest birth rates, atheism is barely discernible. And again, the nations with the highest degrees of organic atheism include the most of the nations of Europe, Japan, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Taiwan, and Israel. Atheism is virtually non-existent in most of Africa, South America, the Middle East, and Asia. The high levels of organic atheism are strongly correlated with high levels of societal health, such as low poverty rates and strong gender equality. In many societies, particularly among the poorest nations with highest birth rates, atheism is barely discernible.